And we're live.
Good evening.
Yeah. Kelson, how you doing? How you
I'm doing
feeling?
well, Matt. And how are you tonight?
Yeah. I'm okay. Yeah, just kind of so let's see. So I've had some changes with my comic book situation lately. Oh, am I
Oh, do
not?
tell.
I don't think I'm sharing. I need to be sharing my screen. There we go. So I broke with my comics publisher.
No kidding.
Yeah. And it was a we left as friends. It's a mutual agreement. It was basically I don't think this is anything I can't say, but basically like they weren't planning. I'd been with them for 3 years, and they were good about. It's like a digital first sort of publisher, and so you just kind of hand in content, and they put it on their website, and they put it on. Eventually, we moved things over to Webtoons. We always had Comixology and Amazon going, and the idea was always like eventually we'll get things over to we'll crowdfund a print run.
Oh, okay.
And so we tried that 2 summers ago, and we tried to kickstart it. It didn't work. We didn't fund, though we got close. We got like it was like 85% of the way there, so it was close, but no dice. And I guess they were trying different sources, like ways of making money to pay for things for the past couple years, and I don't know. I was never too privy on how that was working, but it never came to fruition. And then I asked them like, "Hey, are you planning this year maybe trying a Kickstarter?" And they had already kind of moved on to doing a something about, it was like a gun control comic. So there's like an anthology kind of thing, and one of my friends was working on that, and I think they were trying to move into handling like topical things of that sort, and maybe teaming up with other people, which is what that was. That Kickstarter also did not fund, unfortunately, but that's still kind of where they were leaning. So I was like, hey, what do you think about KYRIE? You know, we got book 1 that's been done for a couple years now. Do you think we can kickstart it? And they said, honestly, we don't have any plans for 2019 with that. So I just asked, hey, can we what do you say we break contracts? You know.
See here, I didn't even realize you were involved with a publisher. I thought you were self-published.
Yeah. Well, that's part of the problem, I guess, honestly, because I mean, they were doing a lot of the, I guess they were kind of doing managerial work of like, how do you get this stuff on these different platforms so that the creator can create. And so it was always a help to have.
Sure.
But yeah, when you think publisher, you think what do you think when you think publisher? And I'll tell you what I think.
I mean, that would be the they would take what you create and actually be responsible for putting it into a printable format, and then taking care of the logistics of getting it printed.
Yeah.
And I knew you had a print run of your first book at one point. And I guess I was always curious how you pulled that off, but I never actually asked.
It was actually so I crowdfunded the first chapter, which is only like 25 pages or something, and that was just that was digital only, and that was just so that I could I was about to go to grad school. I was about to quit a job that I hated, and I wanted to push out the first chapter, I wanted to work on it full time. I wanted to quit early, basically, quit my job early. And if I could crowdfund people, what do you call it? If they could pay my bills for a week or two, then I can quit a week or two early, and then I can make sure that this actually gets made before I go to grad school, and then I can kind of slowly work on stuff maybe, and I can also kind of test and see if people are interested in the story,
Sure.
so that maybe down the road I could kind of make more. And I in school I could make like a page every 2 or 3 weeks. I wasn't working on it that much, of course, but
yeah.
So it was digital only, and people were nice about, I made enough money to pay to quit early, which is all I asked for. So, and
nice.
I didn't need to publish, it cost nothing to email PDFs to everybody. I had like 200 backers or something. It wasn't huge, but it was cool. So yeah, so I never had the thing printed. So I'm going on my own, and I'm actually pretty excited. It felt like a weird breakup, but it's business. It shouldn't feel that way. And they were cool. They were cooler than I thought they'd be.
Well, depending on how involved you get with someone, that could it could be a
But I'm copacetic now. Just trying to put things over. I got some secrets, some things in my back pocket, but I'm setting up like there's a Patreon kind of thing, Patreon deal I'm doing. So I'm going to be like putting things out early for backers, and I'm going to there's going to be some sort of setup where I can get issues to people directly, and I can get paid directly, which is nice. I've never made a dime, never made a thin dime on KYRIE after like 4 years. My publisher made some money, not very much, but they made some. But
yeah.
So that's
crowdfunding is an interesting thing. I once heard somebody, and I'm going to very heavily censor what I'm about to say for numerous circumstances, but I always had somebody make a complaint about a similar project. We'll say similar. Saying that, oh, well, this seems like a personal tribute to somebody the creator's close to, so they should front the cash for it themselves. They shouldn't get crowdfunding. And I'm like, why? Wow. And they're like, well, because it's personal. I'm like, and if people want to pay money to see that, then that's the beauty of crowdfunding. If people nobody's holding a gun to anybody's head. It's like, hey, here. Yeah. Do you want to pay to see more of this, or do you not care? And you have that option to say, oh, I really don't care, and I'm gonna like go watch more stuff on YouTube, or you can say, hey, you know what, I like what this person is doing. Hey, I've got a few spare dollars lying around. I'll just throw them at this person. I mean,
yeah.
I'm thinking of like all the people that get paid just to breathe on Twitch, and I'm like, yeah, because there's nothing personally aggrandizing about what they do.
Yeah.
So I thought that was the most, and I called the person out, and I was like, I think perhaps you have a personal issue with this person, or perhaps the object of tribute that you perceive, and maybe that's the crux of this. And they got very indignant at that point.
Oh man.
So
yeah, that's terrible, because that's one of the beauties of crowdfunding now, is that, like you pointed out, that there's as many reasons to give someone money as there is like ways of determining value, I guess. If that makes sense. And fortunately, like this kind of like radically democratizes the value exchange, I guess. You know, so there's a lot of different ways. Like, there's traditional things that look like, oh, I'm making a book for a mass audience, but I can't front the funds, so will you be my mass audience and buy this? Or it can be, you know, like me, like technically I can give you the book for free, but can you pay for me to quit early? Or yeah, or just like, okay, this is maybe it is a personal project for somebody, but I think that you would like it too. You know, you'll find your own reasons for liking it. Here's my pitch. What do you think? Do you want to read it as well? Yeah.
I haven't.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm in largely the same boat. I haven't made anything off of, well, any of the writing that I've done ever, really. And I don't expect to at any point in the future, because, I mean, there's a bit of difference. One might say we've put comparable amounts of work into what we've done, but I mean, what you have, the completed panels you have are a lot more tangible in a manner of speaking. It's like you can hold this up and say, hey guys, I made this comic book, and people will be like, wow, that is a lot of work. I mean, it looks like a lot of work. You can tell it's a lot of work just looking at it. On the other hand, show people a manuscript, I'll be like, oh, well, it's not Tolstoy's War and Peace, so it probably didn't take you that long. I mean, I actually had somebody say that to me after I designed a logo for them, and they wanted to be strange with the change about it. They're like, "Oh, well, it didn't take you that long." I'm like, "How do you know how long it took me?" "Oh, well, I could download software and do that." It's like, yeah,
oh my gosh,
just told me 5 minutes ago you never would have thought to do what I did with the initials of your business and the way I presented this. So why don't we stop whining to the mechanic about paying him $95 to tighten a screw, and accept that the screw is $5, the other 90 is for knowing which screw to tighten.
Yeah, very well said. Yeah, I remember there was kind of like a meme going around like 5 or 6 years ago about how it doesn't take me long because it took me 10 years to learn how for this to not take long. And that's what you're paying for, the expertise as well as the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'd love to do a whole host of illustrations with my stuff, which would probably make it more accessible for some people. I mean, granted, there are still people out there that like to read. And I mean, at that point, if I can ever get a more finished draft of the complete story, maybe I can look at self-publishing. And I'd obviously want to, whether I outsourced illustration to somebody, which that might be difficult because I'd be extremely picky. So I'm probably just have to brush up on it and do it myself. And obviously I could do all the design work for the packaging of it and whatnot myself. Because I've worked on books, magazines, documents, all that stuff.
Yeah, that would be exciting, I would imagine, to throw your expertise in to something like that.
Probably where I would need to figure out the one part of it that I would have to look into is, if I wanted to actually do a print run and, then like go about selling those online or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or even to just sell digital copies like on, Amazon or iTunes or whatever.
I've heard, I haven't looked into it, but I've heard that Amazon has a like an indie publishing kind of wing to it where you can do like a made to order sort of thing. So it wouldn't be financially, it's probably they're gonna sell you your book at market rates, but it could be nice, just to even have one is kind of a big deal. So you could just pay to have them print one for $20 or something. but I haven't looked into that. Maybe cheaper if there's no. I don't know. I don't know how they run things, especially if it doesn't have illustrations. It could be cheaper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. But at the same time, you know, like I have said before, I look at it as a personal passion. It would,
yeah,
kind of.
That's where the value is.
Yeah, and I'm kind of thinking the long con there because it's like something I'm going to be working on for a number of years more, probably before it's ready or anything like that.
Yeah, that's understandable.
Honestly, in a way, it provides me an alternative to like a free alternative. And you might say, I mean, they say a penny saved is a penny earned. So in a roundabout kind of sideways context, it is making me money because it's saving me money. Like a lot of other people, they need to go to the movies and play video games, what have you, to vicariously live through fictional characters that other people made up. And I don't have the same need to do that on anywhere near the same level, because if I want a fictitious world to lose myself in, I'll just plug in some Ivan Torrent music and think about what's going on in my world.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and that's invaluable. I mean, you can't put a price tag on that.
No. And that was how I got into, you know, creating characters and world building in the first place, even as a kid, not just drawing characters. And I spent a ton of time drawing when I was younger. But I would also come up with stories and what have you behind everything and everyone that I drew, and that seemed important. And obviously, as I've gotten older and more experienced, I like to think I've gotten better at that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's kind of funny because as I watch a bunch of stuff critiquing movies that I dislike, and you know, seeing a lot of points that I agree with about, like, well, you know, this is just an objectively poorly written character because of this, and I think, you know, that's a really good point. Now I need to make sure I don't do that.
Yeah, yeah.
And if I've done anything like that, I need to make sure it's not.
Okay, that makes me want to. I've got something to throw at you.
Sure.
So I drove up on a whim to Fort Myers Saturday because I had like an hour to kill, and I was like, I really have a hankering for a comic, so I was like, I'm just gonna go to a comic book shop over there. And it turned out it was a free comic book day, so it was kind of nuts.
Nice.
But I picked up some stuff, you know, and I'm gonna maybe make some like video review kind of things. I'm kind of getting into that, and and I'm evaluating based on story as much as art, maybe more story than art, to learn the craft and to see how it's done well and how it's not done well. And I'm realizing, okay, like a lot of the stuff I bought was Star Wars comics. There's a lot of #1s that came out, and I just wanted to like see like what's the state of Star Wars storytelling, I guess.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of tropes that I'm expecting, and I'm already finding that I don't know if they exist anymore. like I don't know if, you know, I guess it's always, I don't know how it's not like a fresh take anymore to say like, oh, the culture's changed. But like there'll be like there's like an Air Force pilot story arc, and so I'm expecting like, okay, there's going to be like it's the Empire, so I'm expecting like a fascistic maybe female character who's doubles down whenever she has the opportunity. Maybe she's got like a emotional wound from the past, but that instead of working on that to heal it, like when her principles are challenged, she like I said, she just doubles down, and then like she's never going to change. And then maybe there's like a you know, like a younger male pilot who just really wants to impress her and you know, he's kind of has some principles, but maybe he thinks he has some weaknesses because he's too sensitive or something. And then turns out when his principles are challenged, that turns into a strength, and then he joins the rebellion or something. Like, I don't know, I'm just kind of making this stuff up, but those are the sort of stories that I expect to see in like a military sci-fi comic book drama, if that makes sense. And I read the thing, and I don't know if it's like meta story, like I don't know, like or maybe it's just like a bad comic, or maybe it's good. I don't know what I'm seeing yet, but none of the tropes were there. So I don't know what to expect. Like it looks like a comic book, it reads like a comic book, but like every single character was kind of emotionally empathetic. Like zero of like maybe one of them, but pretty much zero of them have are committed to the Empire. Like all of them already seem like they're doubting in issue 1. Um, I'm trying to think. Like yeah, so it was just weird. Like there's I used to think there's universal principles to storytelling, but I'm wondering if that's based on what was tried and true and worked for a generation or two in America, particularly with the influence of like American cinema and stuff like that, and kind of blockbuster approaches that did I say American, but really captured global audiences with, and they try it with like Avengers movies nowadays and stuff like this. But
yeah,
there's like the quote unquote universal Western storytelling approach appeal, and then there's I don't know what I'm looking at. I got to read more comics to see. And this is Marvel, and Marvel they have their own issues, I guess, with comics nowadays. They're not what they used to be. But I'm just realizing, long story short, that what I expect and what I'm getting, like maybe there's new tropes being developed, I guess. Maybe there's new expectations on what makes a good story, and maybe if it's done enough, maybe it becomes good. I don't know. I'm not trying to be too relativistic, but that's
certainly a
temptation.
You'd say a few things about cultural iconoclasm there, particularly in entertainment.
Yeah,
it's like, this is what used to make good stories. This is what was a tried and true method of effective storytelling for not just the last 50 years, but the last 500, if not 5,000 years.
Yeah.
But hey, let's change that because, the youngest generation thinks that's offensive now. And we're going to do better.
Like maybe that's what's going on in this comic I just read, that they're going to make, so you're telling a story where there's a bunch of people on the bad side, but how do you make that interesting? Well, you know that one of them is going to be turned to the rebellion by the end. Like that's an expectation, that's going to happen. But
I don't know that it necessarily needs to. I mean,
it doesn't need to. You're right, but
it's something to hope for. But I guess maybe. Well, I don't know what would make it more interesting, because, and this is, a lot of people will complain about this. They'll say, well, if there's one person who just, I mean, hell, they even tried to do that with Finn, but in like the new movies. And the problem there was, his character seems completely self-contradictory to the story that's built around him. It's like the stormtroopers are supposed to receive some kind of psychotropic programming, and it's like his just didn't take or whatever. And it's like he sees another stormtrooper get shot, or I don't even remember how exactly it goes down at the beginning of Force Awakens. I just remember those, like that first firefight where they're killing all those villagers, God knows why. And it's like Finn's like, oh, I can't do this. Why am I here? And I'm like, well, yeah, that's one thing. If you're like the guy in Full Metal Jacket who was forced to shoot a child just to save himself, but I mean, we're talking somebody who's been brain panned here.
Yeah.
So it's.
Well, he's his own thing where it's almost like, I guess, I guess what I'm thinking is there's like the Force Awakens is, and really both the sequels so far are trying to revisit and reframe classic storytelling that the original trilogy kind of embodied, and maybe reassess and revise, I guess, the tropes, but they're trying to start with the tropes, but then saying, like, oh, you didn't used to not care about stormtroopers. Well, what if you were one? Wouldn't you feel really bad really quickly about what you were doing? Like, they're
Yeah.
trying to do that sort of thing, which I can appreciate. But maybe there's this like new storytelling where you go beyond that and then you say, okay, now that we're abandoning all the tropes, now what do we do? What do we build positively? And like, I'm probably reading into it too much, but I'm wondering if what they do instead is just make everyone likable, everyone eminently relatable, and I don't know, like, hope that things get interesting from there.
I mean,
But
one thing that modern audiences, air quotes around modern, seem to dislike in movies is predictability. And I say that tongue in cheek because I think I think like a lot of movies get panned by critics because it's like, oh, well, this was so predictable. Yeah, well, I think a lot of the movies you guys celebrate have an equal level of predictability. You just selectively ignore it.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the way in. Mm-hmm. If you want to have a character, it's like, say you focus on the Empire, like now when you first mentioned this, what I thought of, and look this up at some point because it's incredible. Mm-hmm. Somebody did an 80s like Fist of the North Star era.
I know what you're gonna say.
Style hand-drawn anime short about TIE fighter pilots.
Yep, it's beautiful.
And I'm like, okay, you know what? This is kind of a mind screw because they're TIE fighter pilots, and this is like completely from the Empire side. There's no guilt or remorse that they are killing rebel fighters, but it's like, well, it's like Starship Troopers. Hey, we're doing for the good of the Empire. Would you like to know more?
Yeah.
But the thing is, it was just beautifully rendered.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of made me think of that Starship Troopers, how to make fascism look sexy.
Yeah, and they did it really well, I thought. And which is, man, Starship Troopers, I used to love it just for being fun, and now going back and I realize the whole thing is it's a critique of fascism while it's entertaining you, of course.
Well, and at the same time, and it's interesting because if you watch a lot of movies about the Nazis, like Schindler's List is a great example, and you see their cruelty and their barbarism and just what they did to people, just unconscionable, put on display. That gives you one impression of them, and you're like, how could anybody ever get involved with these people?
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, if you were unaware of the things that they did, if you didn't know about any of that, and say your first impression of them was a more sanitized one from, say, like The Sound of Music, where it's like everybody fears them, but you don't really know why. Say you know nothing else about them and you watch the way they're presented in that movie. Yeah, they're the villains, but you don't see them murdering or torturing anybody. You just see this incredibly organized military force that carries themselves with this sense of pride and authority, and that in and of itself, it has a certain appeal to the human spirit because there's always this desire with people to be on the side of strength.
Yeah.
Some people, other people, they always want to root for the underdog. That's why you're always going to have the type of person who sides with the rebellion. You're always going to have the type of person who sides with the Empire. It comes down to whether you want to be on the side of strength that can often completely negate any principles you might have. It's like, well, I don't really agree with what they're doing, but well, I don't want to be on the losing side, so I better just go along. And at the same time, and for many of the German people, this was true. How willing are you to turn a blind eye to unconscionable atrocities being committed in the name of this so-called order that you, by your silence, support?
Yeah, yeah. Like, I mean, would you be willing to join, the Nazi Party, because that's the only way you're going to be able to get a job these times, and you don't want to be politically incorrect and not be a fascist.
and this was something that we actually, I forget which class we talked about this, but we actually watched the video from the Milgram experiments. And it was an experiment that was done in Britain following World War II. Because the general consensus about the German people from the British and the rest of Europe really was what was wrong. How could you allow this to happen? How could you allow such barbarism and cruelty to rise to power and then just take over? And the Milgram experiment was quite simply people being instructed to knowingly commit murder in the name of scientific research. And they were instructed as such by a perceived authority figure. In this case, a scientist wearing a lab coat that would say, oh, well, the experiment must be completed. And I don't know how much you know about the Milgram experiment.
No, I've never heard of this.
So basically, this person would be taken into a room and sat down, and in front of them is a series of switches. And they're told by this official scientist-looking guy in a lab coat with glasses and a clipboard, a whole shooting match, that every time they flip a switch, a person in the next room will be given an electric shock of increasing severity. In order to complete the experiment, you have to flip there's either 10 or 12 switches, I forget how many, and they'd have a person in the next room. Now, here's the rub. The person in the next room was not actually receiving any electric shocks, but as they flipped the switches, the person would begin to scream and react as if they were actually in pain. And it was very interesting seeing how some of the people involved in this experiment, you would swear they have no soul, because there was zero empathy in it's like, oh dear, it sounds like it's hurting him. And a lot of them would be like, I can't go on with this. The next one might kill him. And the scientist's response was always the same. It was very calm, very collected. It would just very matter of factly say, well, the experiment requires that you press all the switches. And unfortunately, I think it was less than half, if not fewer, would just completely refuse to go past a certain point. A lot of people completed the experiment, per se, at which point you'd hear screaming, and it's like then with the last one, you'd hear nothing. So as far as the person knew, they had just committed a murder.
Oh, wow.
In the name of science. Some people were very remorseful about that. Others were disturbingly not. I mean, I remember seeing video of this one girl. She's like, "Oh dear, I think I killed the bloke," and she giggles.
Oh wow! So it's all like video recorded.
Yeah.
Oh wow!
I think maybe it took place in, I can't remember if it was like the 50s or 60s, but it was after World War II, and the whole point of it was to point out, to answer the question, how could the German people do what they did?
Yeah.
And the answer is, unfortunately, simple. Because human nature is what it is, if people are told to do something by a perceived authority figure, most people will lay their own personal morality aside and do as they're told. Very few will actually have a reality check where they're like, okay, no, this is morally wrong. I'm not going to continue. I'm not going to be a part of this. But most people, if a perceived authority figure tells them it's okay, it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess that's something. That's another. I guess that's a trope that I expect from. If you're gonna tell like the Imperial, you know, you're gonna tell a story from the Star Wars side of. I mean, the Imperial side of Star Wars. You're gonna tell that story. At some point, there's gonna be like, how many of these buttons are you willing to press for the Empire? Like that always happens, and I'm satisfied that usually I'm happy when that's the trope that's expressed. And I get weirded out when people don't pursue that, because maybe consequences for ideology is a nebulous subject. I feel like in 2019, maybe, where people aren't sure like how much can we criticize particular worldviews. What's safe to criticize? Maybe, I don't know. In like in a fictionalized world of fictionalized characters. People seem. I mean, it's easy to criticize stuff in real life, it seems, but
I think, and I mean, I am a supporter of free speech and the fact that everything should be up for criticism.
Yeah.
And it's like somebody could turn around and say to me, "Oh, well, how would you feel if somebody criticized your beliefs?" And they're like, "I went through 4 years in art school.
Yeah.
People criticized my beliefs every day, and it was laughed at. So I've already endured that."
Yeah, yeah. And I guess this segues into other stuff, but I've the past couple of years I've kind of changed to I no longer look for people to form friendships with people who agree with me. I just try to find people who are okay with me disagreeing. Whether I agree or not isn't gonna affect our relationship, because I'm gonna do my best to be, um, I guess, to respectfully disagree as
Yeah.
a friend. And if I find that other people are willing to speak up and to tell me if they agree, and also or disagree, and also if they're cool about me doing the same, then I feel like we're bros at that point. And that's not something I used to. I think the instinct is just to say, oh, I'm going to be friends with people who agree with me. I'm not going to be friends with people who disagree with me. And I think that's kind of breaking down. It broke down for me. I think a lot of people are kind of sick of uh, just trying to find people they agree with.
Well, that's impossible for me because my
Yeah.
my views are so odd, you might say. It's like I'll fit into one category on one subject, but
Yeah.
not on another.
Yeah.
And so I mean, I've had people from both sides of the what what's called political spectrum say I'm nuts, and
Yeah.
of course, just say I'm an extremist from the other side, just for thinking one thing that's not even really related to government politics per se.
Yeah.
Which I guess is just a testament to the kind of boxes that we've become accustomed to putting each other in.
Yeah, yeah, and for safety's sake, I guess we're trying to balance the boat again. Things have gotten rocky, and so we have to turn into extremists. Is the belief goes, in order to solidify uh, ideological boundaries again. And I don't think the box is going to close, and I'm excited about that. It's going to be very chaotic.
I do believe personally that as Christians, we should be extremists in that regard, and that we should be, and I don't mean go around browbeating people, and certainly not, evangelizing at the point of a sword like some religions do.
Yeah.
But we should be unwavering on our principles, and we should not be afraid of offending people who do not share our beliefs. I mean, like when and here's an example. When Matt Walsh throws Ken Ham under the bus for believing in young Earth creationism, which, by the way, I personally do agree with.
Yeah, yeah.
There may be some variances in what I believe and what Ken Ham believes, but I do not believe the Earth is millions of years old, nor does it need to be. And he says, well, you know, Walsh's argument is, well, that makes Christianity less accessible to people. And I'm thinking, why don't you take a good, hard look at that statement? Because when Jesus told the Jews everything they were doing was misplaced, was he trying to make his teachings accessible?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's
that's a death knell.
And even churches that say, oh, well, you know, you can follow other religious paths and still and still, you know, come to, you know, you can still go to heaven. I'm like, so the part where Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, no one comes to the Father but through me. I mean, we are Christians here. Should the teachings of our Lord and Savior not mean something to us at least? I know they don't mean anything to secularists, but that's why they're secularists. They should mean something to us.
Yeah.
It should be something that we stand by unwaveringly. And if we don't, why bother sitting in church every Sunday? For what purpose? Is it a social club?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the answer is yes to some people. Yeah.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
kind of the church I grew up in for the most part, in at least my experience in the United Methodist Church, and before that in Unitarian, that world, which isn't even I don't know. The United Methodist is trying to be Christian, and Unitarian is trying to not be. They're doing their own thing. They call themselves a church, but I don't think they would. I think they'd be offended if you wanted them to define Christian categories. I guess I don't know.
No, I'm going to offend numerous people by saying this, but I'm just going to say it plainly. Any church that professes to be Christian and yet does mental gymnastics to justify what is inherently Baal worship is not Christian.
Yeah. Well, it's I think the death knell, like when you're worried about whether or not some you making a statement of fact or truth, and you're worried about whether or not it's going to be relevant to the audience, like you've already lost. You've lost every game you're trying to play, because this is the situation we're in now. Like that's the culture's already trying to do that with you know, how do we make science more relevant by, you know, saying things that don't offend people about science, or
because heaven forbid people be offended by scientific facts.
Yeah, which is just statements of what we believe to be, you know, this is our best evidence of what the facts are right now, and that's what religious statements are usually in the.
And you know, that's actually a really good point. It's like there's a lot, and God, I am so tired of this narrative that people lean on like a broken doorbell. That if you have religion, you're anti-science. No, not at all.
Yeah.
Now there are certain people that are religious to a dogmatic fault, where you know they will actually deny science. And unfortunately, they give the hateful secularists all the ammo they'll ever need. But then again, there are many people who, it's like, well, no, if science, like the word science itself is so abused anyway. It comes from the scientific method, which is simply a method of using repeatable experimentation to discover and explore the truths of the known universe. And you ascertain those truths by gathering evidence through experiments and being able to repeat those experiments over and over again. And there you establish rules.
Yeah, well said.
It's like math. What makes mathematical rules is because they're absolute. But even then, you get into quantum physics, quantum mechanics, and then what was formerly thought of as absolute, it's actually a lot more organic than you thought possible.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact of the matter is, our understanding of the universe we live in is still quite limited. I mean, for all our advanced technology, for all our understanding, uh, you know, there's still a lot of things we don't have figured out, and probably won't. And then, you know, you read Heiser, so I'm sure you've asked this question yourself before. You know, when you see new technological advancements, it's like, does it ever just kind of bounce through your head? Oh, look, more secret knowledge. Wonder where that came from.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, it's fun. Like every once in a while, you come across an article and people are comparing the scientific advancements and even just the theoretical advancements in physics and things like that from the first like 50 years of the 20th century compared to the second half or to today, and how things have kind of I mean, I've read about them somewhat plateauing to an extent, reaching limits, which I guess Einstein even anticipated, and other people, that there's only so much you can directly observe and test and do repeatable, you know, that you can actually work out in the lab, and which I think is kind of fascinating. Like, what do you do? I mean, there's a sci-fi story for you. What do you do when you reach a scientific ceiling of sorts? I guess, at least as far as we understand science, you know.
Yeah.
And what does that do? Like, where do you sit? And I guess some just like maybe more dystopian type sci-fi stories, like Blade Runner or something, kind of introduce that, I guess, in on some level, like the future isn't shiny and happy, and we haven't worked out our problems. It's just kind of uh, we're still in the same pit. It's just a bit deeper now. We just use technology to dig it a bit deeper, and we're just kind of sitting there.
I always found that to be a more realistic future than I always found that to be a more realistic take on the future than Star Trek.
Yeah.
Star Trek is fun, and it's a nice idea, and some really good series and movies came out of it. Also, some really bad ones.
Yeah.
But what I found was funny about Star Trek, particularly like if you watch The Next Generation, which is hands down the most meme-worthy Star Trek of all time. I will not say it's the best, because Deep Space Nine is the best, and Voyager kind of rides Deep Space Nine's coattails, but some might argue that Deep Space Nine was only as good as it was because they heavily ripped off Michael Straczynski's Babylon 5 to make it. But I enjoy both shows, so I'll allow it, because Straczynski still had his success regardless of Paramount's corporate theft that was then settled out of court. But that's not really here nor there. The point is,
that's interesting.
It's interesting because Patricia Tallman, she played one of the characters on Babylon 5, and she was close enough to Straczynski that she knew all these details, and yet she still had minor roles in episodes of Star Trek. She played a Romulan in an episode of TNG. She played a random female in an episode of Voyager.
Oh, wow. Paying those bills.
Yeah, you know, the rent comes due every month, so.
Gosh, yeah. I wonder if she had a heart-to-heart talk with them over the phone or something, like, hey, would you hold it against me if I, you know?
I don't know. But anyway, the what I found completely goofy, and they tried to push this to a certain degree in like the original series and then the movies with Kirk and company, and even then it fell kind of flat. You know, like they make this big deal about how, we don't use money in the 24th century, and then geez, we get 5 minutes into Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, which is arguably one of the good movies. movies. I mean, the odd-numbered movies are thought of as the bad ones, and like with the exception of Nemesis, the even-numbered movies are thought of as the good ones. You know, Wrath of Khan, Voyage Home, Undiscovered Country, First Contact. Those were the good ones.
Yeah, yeah.
Those were the ones we put up on a pedestal.
Yeah.
And in Undiscovered Country, they're talking about retirement or whatever. And Scotty just out of nowhere. I mean, this is just a demonstration of lazy writing by people who didn't know what they were talking about. He says, "Suits me, I just bought a boat." I'm sorry, Scotty. Did you say bought? What did you buy it with?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You know,
oh, that's funny.
But you guys weren't using money in the 24th century. What'd you buy a boat with? Did you pay in pizza rolls?
Oh, beautiful. Oh, I miss that voice. I miss it. Ah, why
Dude,
can't
I
they
love
bring
it.
it back?
Dude, you gotta watch Hack Fraud.
Yeah. No, that's
He does like.
Tonight.
I was disappointed when I watched the TFA review, and he basically just drones on for an hour about ring theory, which I thought was interesting but kind of silly.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Freaking Hack Fraud's TFA review, it's great because he keeps talking about the plot holes and the inconsistencies, and he keeps showing clips of like the man behind the curtain from Wizard of Oz. He's like, "Don't ask questions, don't ask questions."
That's exactly what's going on.
Had me in stitches. I kid you not. It's like, and then of course he gets to Snoke, and we have the obligatory, "What's wrong with your face?"
Yeah. Oh my gosh, classic. So it's written like by a fan.
Oh yeah,
that's nice.
It's basically his endeavor is to do the job that letter media, for whatever reason, I guess the wall of dollar signs, refuse to do. It's like, oh, well, it's cool to trash the prequels, but can't trash these new movies unless we be called Russian bots or trolls or something. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'll watch it. I'll watch it tonight. That's
But to get back to Star Trek, it's
please.
And
this is fascinating.
There is another line, I think, in that same movie where it's like the use of money is mentioned. I'm like, dude, are you kidding me? You guys keep saying you don't use money, and then you have a person say they use money. Like in Generations, when Picard is in the Nexus, and here's Kirk chopping wood at this this beautiful house, and Kirk's like, "Oh, it's okay, come in. It's my house." Well, at least it used to be. I sold it years ago. Well, here we are again, Kirk. Who'd you sell it to? A Ferengi? What did he pay in? Gold pressed latinum? Which, by the way, while Deep Space Nine is arguably the best Star Trek series, it also presents the biggest conundrum because you have a Bajoran space station with a whole plethora of different aliens living there. And everybody seems to pay for things using gold pressed latinum, which is gold with this liquid currency suspended in it that for some reason, I guess because it read the script, it can't be replicated.
Yeah, of course.
Because I'm like, if you have matter energy, if you have energy to matter replication,
everything could be replicated.
Nothing should be inherently invaluable because you can take energy and duplicate whatever material you like.
Yeah, so it wouldn't even matter. Yeah.
So, when the plot calls for something to actually be valuable, we just have material that can't be replicated for whatever reason or another.
Mm-hmm. So, I've been listening. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Keep going.
But you see all these Starfleet officers, they're like at Quark's bar, and, they're paying for drinks, and they're playing the Dabo wheel with latinum. And I'm thinking, where did they get it? I mean, humans don't use money. They don't use money on Earth. So obviously the Federation doesn't pay their officers a salary.
Yeah.
So, and I kind of feel like they just forgot about that and then just, don't ask questions. Don't ask questions. But at the same time, they strip so much of what makes humans human out of the human characters in the interest of appearing more evolved. you'll notice they have to create all these alien races that make up for all the human stereotypes that aren't there because humans are evolved now.
Because they've been scrubbed. Yeah.
Because otherwise the show would be boring.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's my quick spiel about why Star Trek is inherently problematic, because you so far remove humans from their own humanity, they cease to be human, and yet then they have these stupid petty drama arguments. I'm like, wow, this isn't very evolved.
Yeah. Well, and they're and at the end of the day, you're telling a story to 20th and 21st century humans, and you need to entertain them, and the ratings have to be decent for your show to still be on air. So I don't know why you can't tell, no matter what century you want to tell your story in, it's gonna be for your contemporary audience who's gonna enjoy it. So you gotta, and they squared that circle with the aliens, like you pointed out. But yeah,
and also it just, a lot of the time it ends up feeling like the same marketing copy kind of attitude that I complained about with like the new Star Wars movies and other movies too, where it's like, you know, it's kind of like Mark Wahlberg's character in was it Age of Extinction or whatever, where he tells you 50 times how he's an inventor. It's like, I guess it would have killed Michael Bay to just, I don't know, show him inventing something.
Yeah. I mean, it's Star Trek to me. It always felt like there's been times when I've liked tuning in and seeing stuff, and then a lot of times it kind of just felt like I guess like a boomer pipe dream about like, you know what I mean? Like, where it's just like, you know, we're the age of Aquarius. We can solve all problems. Like, don't. We're not like our parents who had to fight world wars. Like, we can just I don't know. We can peace and harmony our way to better civilization, and I feel like it's a little tone deaf now. And I guess later series is, my understanding is, they got better as they went along because they started I guess exploring the Star Trek universe from the outskirts of the edges of Federation space and stuff like that, and spending more time with the aliens, and which was another way of actually exploring how, you know, this perfect world that the Federation had figured out is never really perfect and is never long lasting, I guess. You know, so you got to show the grittier side of the universe because that's more realistic, I guess. You know,
one thing about Deep Space Nine, and Voyager did this too to an extent, but I felt Deep Space Nine was more successful with it, was in, you know, touching base on like the whole moral ambiguity clause. It's like, you've got Federation, you've got these noble ideals, you've got this prime directive. Okay, you're faced with a relentless enemy that wants to destroy you and will stop at nothing to do so. Are you going to stick to suicidal rules of engagement, or are you going to fight them on their own terms and maybe survive? So prime directive doesn't mean anything if you're all dead.
Yeah, that's exciting. That's good storytelling, and that's probably one of the reasons why people like Deep Space Nine and the other one you mentioned so much, because it's I mean, that's gritty, which reflects, you know, the world that we saw in the 90s, and
oh yeah, I mean, like both Deep Space Nine and Voyager, despite being sci-fi set in the future, they are both so patently 90s. It's not even
yeah. And they've always retained Star Trek. You know, sci-fi in general is known, at least originally, to be a medium for like critique, like taking an element of current culture and, you know, pushing it out to a logical conclusion and seeing if there's problems with it when you do that.
Sure.
Star Trek's always done that, and other stories maybe aren't like Star Wars isn't really known for that. I guess, you know, everyone knows it's more fantasy than sci-fi anyway, but Star Trek's always been great about exploring that. I don't know if there's still I don't know about this new series, how well they're exploring that. This might be the first time that Star Trek has stopped with that. I don't know. I tune into review stuff every once in a while to hear how the latest show is going, and it doesn't sound great. But
yeah, well, a lot of people completely refuse to watch it just because CBS stuck it behind a paywall.
Oh yeah.
I honestly thought the independent fan series, which, well, not even really independent fan series because it was being directed by Tim Russ, and he did play Tuvok, so there's that. Star Trek Renegades stood to be much better. Now, it didn't have the production value, unfortunately, but, I mean, okay, I don't know how familiar you were with Voyager. Do you remember the character Icheb?
Oh gosh, no, I'm not going to know them by name. Icheb?
Okay, Icheb. He was a former Borg that they had rescued, but he was just like a teenage boy.
Oh, like 7 of 9 kind of thing.
Kind of, except he didn't spend a lot of time as a drone like 7 did, so there was a lot less programming they had to reverse. Like 7 of 9 was human. Icheb was, if I remember correctly, his race was Norcadian. And then it's like they take him back to his family, and then they come to find out he was actually offered up as like a sacrifice to the Borg.
Oh wow!
As kind of like a hush payment to keep them from destroying their settlement or whatever.
Oh, that's interesting.
But so then he ends up staying with the Voyager crew and becoming a recurring character. Well, you know, obviously, when Voyager gets back to Earth at the end of the series, spoiler warning, if you haven't watched it in the last 20 years.
No, it's
fine. Anyway, he it's like his arc was one of the stories that never really wrapped up what happened, and so in this series that took place some years later, like apparently the Federation's version of the CIA, Section 31, had gotten a hold of him, and it's like they did a lot of experimentation on him. It's like they weaponized him. He was kind of like a half Borg, half humanoid Mega Man.
Oh, neat! Wow,
it was like freaking awesome. Like he had like a multi-tool / gun arm.
Oh my goodness!
I was like, this is the coolest thing they could have possibly done with Icheb, and I love it.
And that's great because it's not going with the whole like the higher up you go in the Federation, the more squeaky clean they are. Like there's some like maybe that's like there's morally either problematic or at least debatable stuff that they were doing, which is cool.
That's the marketing copy anyway, but Section 31 was, I mean, they were like the Black Ops, the black budget. They
okay, yeah.
They were pretty much the ones playing dirty pool while the rest of the Federation just stood there pretending to have squeaky clean hands.
Oh wow! Oh my gosh, I love that. Okay, that's making all right. I might have to start watching Voyager. I mean, that's what I tune in for. I want to see sci-fi like that.
Which in a way is, I mean, actually, Section 31 was more. It was more discussed in Deep Space Nine.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
Like,
one more reason to watch Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, it's actually arguably because of Section 31 that the Federation was able to bring a peaceful end to the Dominion War anyway. And I will not say any more than that.
Yeah, well, it means nothing to me anyway so far. So
the Dominion War becomes a pivotal multi-seasonal plot arc that takes up basically the entire second half of the show.
Oh, neat.
From like the middle of, I'd say, season 4 on. Yeah. The conflict with this all-encompassing power that controls the Gamma Quadrant, which is, like, you might say, the northwestern quarter of the Milky Way galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to get a foothold in the Alpha Quadrant, which is where the Federation is primarily located.
Yeah. Oh, man. See, I'm loving this. The more you talk about it, it's so interesting.
I was a huge Star Trek nerd before I got into Star Wars or any of the other stuff. But of course, then when I got into Star Wars, I wanted to learn more about it. So, you know, I had the Star Wars encyclopedia, I had the Star Trek encyclopedia. I've always been equal opportunity when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah, yeah. For some reason, there was a. I mean, it was just uncool to like both. At least in my corner of. I don't know. For my childhood, for some reason, with my friend circle, so I just picked. I went with my parents like Star Trek more.
I didn't have to worry about social pressures because I had no friends as a teenager. So
yeah, that helps.
I was just like, well, I can do what I want and not have to worry about being criticized for it. So that's cool.
Yeah, that helps a lot. Yeah.
It's like while everybody else was listening to angsty grunge rock music, I was listening to the Night at the Roxbury soundtrack, loving it.
Yeah. Oh man. Dang it! What? It's already 11:15.
Yeah, man. Well, we didn't start until a little after 10. So
yeah, this is my bad. Family stuff, but
oh man, dude, I understand.
we need to go through. Man, not only do I like the things that you talk about, but I like the way you talk about them. It'd be cool to
appreciate that.
Maybe go through, just talk about Star Trek some more or something.
Yeah,
I've got there's a YouTuber who's been going through what's the is it the one from like maybe it's only like 8 or 9 years ago, like the guy from the Quantum show from the 80s.
Oh, you're talking about Enterprise?
Yeah, Enterprise with Captain Archer or whatever.
Yeah, you know,
he's been going through that. It's pretty entertaining to hear how horrible.
When they first brought that show out, I hated it. I refused to watch it. I'm like, this show blows. What the frig is even this intro?
Yeah.
No, I can't do this. And then it was actually my wife that convinced me to give it a chance. And then I watched it, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
The show does have heart, and it's like, you know what? This actually is not bad. It's not perfect, but it's better than I thought it was. And then we got to the final season and the final few episodes, and I said, what the heck?
Oh no, what
have you guys done? And it's like, well, they got canceled. They weren't counting on being canceled, so they kind of had to wrap everything up in a hurry. And I'm like, the worst part of this is like the final episode of the series ends with Will Riker watching like the signing of the Federation Charter on a holodeck simulation. Here's the thing.
Yeah.
The way he and Deanna Troi, because yes, Marina Sirtis and Jonathan Frakes both had cameos, kind of like bookends at the beginning and end of this episode.
Yeah,
the way they were dressed, the way they were dressed, it was supposed to be back during the Next Generation. And the problem is they both look 25 years older.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is so stupid. This movie, this episode came out after Star Trek Nemesis. They should have just put Riker in the present time, Star Trek present time, at his command post on whatever ship he was taking over in Nemesis. I don't remember, where he and Deanna were already married. And not tried to shoehorn them into outfits that didn't fit because they were 25 years old. And I mean, it looked more forced than trying to make Orlando Bloom look 60 years younger as well.
Yeah, I guess when you're doing something that feels like a prequel to a more famous series, you feel like the way you have to end it is you have to remind you like where the characters are about to be in the next series that you've already seen. I guess that's the instinct. But yeah, there's no reason you would never need to do. They could watch that at any point of their lives.
I guess perhaps they thought there was so much hatred directed at Nemesis in general, which, I mean, it wasn't the best Star Trek movie by any means or measure, but I thought it was okay.
Yeah.
But I guess they didn't want to give any relevance to that. It's like, oh no, TNG was far more nostalgic, so we'll try to end it on a nostalgic note. It's like, Yeah, unfortunately, it's like that episode of The Golden Girls where Blanche has to fit in her wedding dress on her anniversary, and she has the thing unzipped in the back just so she can fit.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
It's like you're not really selling it.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're trying to sell it and failing is kind of silly.
Especially on a last episode when
it's just such
you need to
go out
send it off well. Yeah.
But, there was a lot of, they got pretty creative with stuff, and to a point where it's like, they created this whole, starting in season 3, because there were only 4 seasons, they created this whole rivalry between the humans, the Federation, or Starfleet, really, because Starfleet actually predated the Federation. And yeah, it was because it was before the Federation Charter was signed. And of course that involved Vulcan and Andor and a couple of others. And fun fact, the Andorians and the Vulcans hated each other.
Which I feel like a lot of this gets alluded to, right, in Enterprise, where they're like, maybe one day there'll be it's actually a prime directive of some sort or like things like that, right?
Here's something worth mentioning. God, my illustrator hurts just looking at that.
Oh yeah.
My illustrator winced when I saw that.
Your mental illustrator. It's bad.
Yes,
they've all been optimized, so it works now. But.
If I stop talking, it's because I'm experiencing the beach ball.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you're on Windows anyway, so.
Yeah, I'm already.
It would do you well to watch Deep Space Nine first, then Voyager, then Enterprise, because the series make more sense if you experience them in that order. Partially because, and I'll qualify it this way: in Deep Space Nine, Jeffrey Combs plays a couple recurring villains on the show. For one, he plays this Ferengi liquidator, which is kind of like a tax assessor, and I mean, this guy will like literally show up in your closet. Like Quark goes to open his closet, and there's Brunt, and he's like, "Brunt, FCA." And
oh my gosh, I love Ferengi.
They are amazing. And then of course, Nana visitors. You have Nana visitor as Kira, Cisco's first officer, and what a strong female character should be. Take notes, younger writers. And you also have Jadzia Dax, which is another take on a strong female character who's a lot less uptight and a lot more casual. And Kira hates Ferengi. Dax thinks they're hilarious. And the two of them are constantly at odds about that, because Kira's like, they're obnoxious, misogynistic little trolls. And Dax says to her, well, yes, that's true. But once you can get past that, they're quite entertaining.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Oh, they had great banter. Oh, and dude, like freaking Garak and Dr. Bashir, you will love their banter, like Odo's banter with Quark, the criminal and the cop always playing cat and mouse. Dude, I mean, forget the story, which you can't forget, but just the situational relationships between the characters. It's good stuff.
Yeah. Like
I think I know you well enough at this point to say with a certain authority, you will appreciate that.
Yeah, I want to see character archetypes and relationship archetypes handled well in long form storytelling, and I think
Deep Space Nine did that because like you have situational events that go on in the individual episodes, but then there are multi-episode, multi-season spanning arcs, and not just like major political events and things like that, but character development arcs, character relationship arcs. It's like they clearly thought this out, and there was not noticeably a lot of tussle back and forth between showrunners and writers where It's like, oh, this season we're going to run to this side of the boat. No, this season we're going to run to this side of the boat. And this season we're going to toss everything out the window and do something completely different because reasons.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, back to Jeffrey Combs. I think he played a couple of minor roles in Voyager, and he was usually like a villain character.
Uh-huh.
You have to keep in mind, Deep Space Nine started halfway through Next Generation. It was like right after the Borg two-parter.
Oh, interesting.
It actually starts at the Battle of Wolf 359 when Picard was under the Borg. So the Borg basically just completely obliterated the Federation fleet because they had all of Picard's knowledge.
Yeah.
So and Cisco was on one of the ships that was destroyed, and it's like he loses his wife as they're fleeing the ship. So
oh wow.
So like he has a meeting with Picard in like the pilot episode of the show, and he hates Picard because he looks at him and all he can see is Locutus.
Yeah, sure.
Understandably. So it's
as you would.
But and then Deeps and then Voyager, which started after the conclusion of Next Generation, is about halfway through Deep Space Nine. It was when Deep Space Nine was about to start its third season. So Voyager's intro actually just kind of piggybacks off starting out at Deep Space Nine, like because Voyager is going looking for a Maquis ship. And you were familiar with the Maquis. They were a group of humans that had kind of taken a rogue terrorist stance against Cardassians because they were unhappy with the treaty that the Federation had signed.
Oh, neat. Yeah.
And there were like a 2-part episode about the Maquis in Deep Space Nine. So it basically expects you to already be familiar with a certain amount of series lore up to that point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then if you move, if after Voyager, then that's a good time to, go back in time and watch Enterprise, because there's a lot of references, kind of fan servicey things to things in the future, like what they've done with what they've done with the Star Wars movies, like Rogue One and Solo, what have you, where references to things that will be, but it's kind of just like a tongue-in-cheek thing like that.
Yeah.
But probably one of my favorite recurring characters in Enterprise is played by none other than Jeffrey Combs, and he plays an Andorian, and he is such a pain in the neck, but at the same time he's entertaining, and he's got these two little, the Andorians, they have those insect antennae on top of their head, kind of like Mantis and Guardians of the Galaxy.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And they're always moving around and wandering, and they're kind of like eyebrows in a way, because they take on different formations and poses depending on what the Andorian is thinking or what their mood is. So it's like it changes like a facial expression.
Oh yeah, I'm looking them up now. It's wild.
And they like, I don't know if you heard this in the original series, because there were some Andorians in the original series that I didn't really see in any episodes that had them.
I'm seeing one guy, but I think it's just one.
I've not watched TOS all the way through, but it's probably the guy played by Jeffrey Combs, because he really, his character really, just like brought the Andorians out onto center stage, and he would always call the humans pink skins.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
You want to talk about dedication to makeup and what have you? They colored the insides of their mouths blue. I don't even know how they did that. Yeah, I am serious. I don't know if they did that in post or what.
Oh man, like the swig food coloring maybe before going on the set every day.
I don't know, man. They got like bluish teeth. They got blue tongues, blue gums, everything. It's wild.
That's amazing.
So it's like when they call humans pink skins, it's like, yeah, you don't have any visible pink anywhere.
Yeah.
you guys are the Blue Man Group. Times Eiffel 65.
Yeah. Man, you're inspiring me. Voyager and DS9 is inspiring me.
Yeah, man.
Wow.
It's good stuff. Now Voyager is fun, and in a lot of ways, I mean, you can call this, learning from past success. It piggybacks off a lot of the successful approach that Deep Space Nine took, and it's similar, but at the same point, like with the Next Generation, when you have a series based on a starship that's constantly traveling from one place to another, it's really difficult to, they'll stay with some alien races that will be around for half a season or maybe a whole season as they pass through their territory per se, but pretty much you're going to have a lot of one-off aliens that never really feel very fleshed out, and that's why I always prefer Deep Space Nine over all the rest, because with Deep Space Nine you had the Bajorans, you had the Cardassians, you had like the occasional one-off species that would be introduced for an episode or whatnot. And then, when they get into the Gamma Quadrant, they start introducing races from there, like the Jem'Hadar, which are the Dominion's genetically engineered soldiers. And they're freaking amazing because they're kind of like dinosaur people. That's what they look like.
Mm-hmm.
They have their names almost sound like Mayan names, like some kind of Mesoamerican tribe, like Itaqital.
Okay. Yeah.
Their ranking system actually reminds me of like Japanese samurai, and actually their whole demeanor is like Japanese samurai, because it's like victory is life, I'm already dead.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
And it's like they'll take their own lives if they fail to accomplish their mission.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
It's like
Honor
they
bound.
have long hair that they arrange in top knots of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, yeah, I always wondered what it was about the Jem'Hadar that, just despite how fearsome and inherently bad they are, because they work for very evil people and they're programmed to follow them without question. There was something about them I always found appealing. And then once I paid more attention, I'm like, oh, they're kind of like the samurai. Well, that explains that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it makes it. I guess it sounds to me like the aliens have always been more interesting than the humans, with some exceptions, of course. But like the number one guy from. See, this is how little I understand. There's been some exceptions. There's been human captains who are interesting.
When you say number one, are you talking about Riker from Next Generation?
Riker. Yeah. Thanks.
God. Real picture of an evolved human he was. Ship goes from planet to planet. He goes from one pair of women's pants to the next.
Yeah. Well, but at least he had a lot of weird dimensions and things that you could laugh at and things that you could criticize, I guess.
He did. He was quite entertaining. And then you had Geordie LaForge. If you grew up reading Rainbow, it's basically LeVar Burton but wearing funky sci-fi glasses. Although, fun fact, the character was actually based on a fan of Star Trek whose name was George LaForge, and I think he actually was blind.
Oh wow!
And I think it was like a young boy who was blind, but he was a fan of Star Trek, and I think he actually died or something like that, if I'm remembering correctly. And they named the character Geordie LaForge after him in his honor.
Oh gosh, you have to love that.
Yeah. I actually have I had first created this meme back when it was something about prosthetic eyes or whatever, that could just fully functional prosthetic eyes now available. And I had created a meme of like Geordie turning to Data and saying something, and Data just looking at it ponderously. And the text was, first better tablet devices, and now this. That just settles it, Data. We're moving into the 21st century.
Yeah.
Data was easily one of my favorite characters. Brent Spiner just did a brilliant job with that character. And then, of course, you have Michael Dorn as Worf, which, by the way, starting in Season 4 of Deep Space Nine, Worf becomes a main cast member of Deep Space Nine.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah. And
he was always one of my favorites.
Oh, dude. If he fit in well on the Enterprise, he fit in perfectly in Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
Because he's kind of like the hard, like the hard ass character that nobody can get close to except Jadzia because she has the Klingon cheat codes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's 90s Star Trek storytelling, I guess. So people are willing to I guess like Star Trek got more rough and tumble, I guess, because culture got more rough and tumble, I suppose.
Yeah, and then when you had then it just kind of burned out after Enterprise, and a lot of people like myself are still clamoring for them to continue just where they left the timeline off at the end of Voyager. It's like, no,
Yeah.
we want to see more of this 24th century universe you guys were working on. So, and they go back in time to Enterprise. It's like, okay, you had your fun with a prequel. Can we get back to the here and now? Can we see what Tuvok is doing? He supposedly becomes the head of Section 31. Can we find out about that? And that's what I liked about Renegades, because it actually took a step into the future. But it's like, no, then we go back in time again with the Abrams movies, and now we're starting an alternate timeline because,
Yeah.
I mean, granted, Star Trek, that's not a breach of continuity for Star Trek. There are plenty of alternate timelines, alternate universes, what have you. I absolutely hate the Abrams movies. I will not be bashful about that. The one factor of the Abrams movies that I like, and we'll give Abrams credit for this, the visuals in his movies are usually very well thought out and well done. Great shots, great set pieces, albeit often at the expense of things making sense, like Kirk looking at the Constitution class starship being built in Iowa in the middle of a field.
Yeah.
It's like those were constructed in orbit, but whatever.
Oh, but it looked great.
Oh, it looked great. Don't let actual series lore get in the way of a good shot for the trailer.
Yeah.
But aside from that, Carl Urban as Bones, as a young Bones.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought Chris Pine did an okay Kirk. I'm not familiar with him from anything else. I'm not sure who else I would have picked to play Kirk. I thought he did okay as Kirk.
Yeah, entertaining.
But freaking Carl Urban as freaking Bones. Spot on. There was one character I was going to say was just perfectly cast. It was Carl Urban as Dr. McCoy. Like you could totally see him as a young DeForest Kelley in the same way that, like, starting in Attack of the Clones, you could see Ewan McGregor just channeling so what's his name? The guy who played Obi-Wan originally.
Yeah. Sir, yeah. I almost said it's Sir Ian McKellen, but
yeah.
Alec Guinness. Alec Guinness.
Yeah. So, and just in the same way, I thought Ewan McGregor successfully channeled Alec Guinness as he moved, further on through the prequels. I've seen the first two. I've seen bits and pieces of Beyond, but I thought Urban did a solid job as McCoy. I never liked John Cho as Sulu. I hate to say this, but John Cho is kind of typecast for me. I can't look at him without thinking of Harold and Kumar.
Yeah. Yeah.
I actually would have liked to have seen Rain as Sulu. He was like the Tokugan kid in Speed Racer. He was also the protagonist in the movie Ninja Assassin, which very violent, excessively violent, but a good movie. I thought he would have made a better Sulu than John Cho.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see, from what little I understand of Star Wars, I can see that. I mean, Star Trek. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the guy who played Chekhov, he didn't look anything like Walter Koenig, but he did. I guess he did embody Chekhov.
Yeah, I think that's really what people want, right? It's got to feel like the character.
As for Uhura, I did not like the creative license they took where it's like, oh, she's in a relationship with Spock. It's like, okay, that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
It's like that's, and of course also she's just like obviously the strong female type by millennial standards. It's like
Yeah.
you guys
So
went a little bit overboard with that one.
paper thin, one dimensional, but she's
Basically,
strong.
basically just loud and obnoxious and annoying, but don't say that or you're sexist.
Yeah. Yeah. And then once they, I mean, I can't watch any of them after the second one because once I realized, okay, Spock has to learn how to be a leader, or no, Spock has to learn how to use his emotions to keep the girl, which is the exact same thing he learned in the first one. Um, Kirk has to learn how to control his, use his instincts for good rather than evil, and to work as a team, to inspire people as a leader in a group. Like he learned all that in the first one, and then he forgot it all, and then had to learn it again in the second one. I was like, okay,
Yeah,
so
it's
we're just
kind of
gonna
like
do
a
this over and over.
rinse and repeat copy pasta.
Yeah, yeah. So why soft reboot the thing if you're just gonna keep exploring the same? Those are interesting things, but if you're gonna do the same thing with the second one that you did with the first one with the same director, like it's yeah, not impressed. So
Unfortunately, that is also where I feel Abrams falls short because he seems to rely heavily on, well, at least with this kind of stuff. I mean, um, he seems to rely heavily on retconning things and just kind of providing new visuals, but
yeah,
we're
it's
just
cheaper.
we're just
Yeah,
we're just putting a we're just kind of changing the colors, but it's still the same WordPress theme.
yeah, yeah.
It's like the visuals are amazing. I'm not going to dispute that. I mean, like with the exception of the monochromatic, granted Abrams didn't direct Solo, but I'll just say this: like with the exception of the monochromatic scene colorings in Solo, like all of the visuals in the new Star Wars movies are great.
Mm-hmm.
All of the visuals in the new Star Trek movies are great. The visual effects they're spot on. I thought the decision for the beaming animation was a bit cartoony,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps a bit too cartoony because it's like these whimsical white lines kind of spiral around the person and then they disappear. And I'm like, I don't know, as serious and Michael Bay's Transformer-ish as the rest of this looks, that's just kind of out of place.
Mm-hmm.
It would be like if the phasers sounded like the MLG air horn when they were fired.
Yeah, yeah,
Or like a boing noise from Roger Rabbit or something.
yeah. Well, they're trying to yeah. I guess JJ's idea often is, or it's not really JJ. I'm sure he's just part of a greater system of like how do we take these classic IPs that people have liked, but how do we they're probably not good enough anymore for modern audiences. So how do we make them gooder?
You know,
And
I'm just gonna say I despise that attitude in and of
yeah,
itself because there are timeless classics out there that you can show them to every generation. I mean,
yeah,
it's like show the kids whose shoulders modern filmmakers are standing on.
yeah,
We don't need to remake all the classics. And they say, oh, it's for a new generation. Why don't you make up new stories for a new generation? So, don't hijack all the old ones and repackage them with the current political agenda and say, oh, it's for
yeah,
a new generation. It's like that's not necessary. I mean, it's one thing if you're taking something that and just like making it better in terms of like, I mean, a lot of people complain about this. I appreciated what Lucas did when he made this special edition. It's like, okay, he's added a bunch of visual effects and things to the movies that he couldn't have done back in the 70s. I mean, you know, A New Hope was done on a shoestring budget, and they were using old battleship sets for the surface of the Death Star and what have you. So obviously, that was a lot of homegrown visual effects, you know. So they tried to spice it up a bit. Perhaps they went a bit too far in places, but I actually really appreciated seeing Mos Eisley. Just you pan out from the speeder, and there's this huge, bustling city there. It's like I liked being able to actually see it, not just having to imagine it. And it kind of tied in with if you played Shadows of the Empire on the N64 and you did the speeder bike chase through Mos Eisley, it looked like that. So there was a familiarity.
Yeah.
It's like most people forget the special edition actually came out in the late 90s before the prequels even happened. And I remember that because I went to see them in the theaters. And I mean, that alone made me love them.
Yeah. Well, I think, I'll say this and then we can wrap it up.
Okay.
I think the prequels, people complained about them a lot when they came out. And it's been really interesting. I don't think it's just rose-tinted glasses looking back on people's childhood. I think people are realizing that they'd rather have maybe, you know, some clunky acting, some weird storytelling, but something that was earnestly produced and trying to push something into a new direction with each film that had never been seen before. So, you know, like every scene was a surprise, and it was never, you know, self-referential for the most part, and it wasn't trying to redress perceived wrongs of the previous eras, trilogies or something, or it was never a soft reboot. It was always like, oh my gosh, we're going here. Like I don't know how I even feel about it. It might take me years to like what he did with this, but you know, like, so I think people are realizing they'd rather have that than you know, perpetual soft reboots. And like it's just like Empire Strikes Back, but it's on a salt planet. Like, is that going to be interesting for more than 5 seconds? No.
I mean, they're all the dried male tears, apparently.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Actually, and if you get into Hack Frod's Last Jedi review, which is 2 parts and it's very long, but there's so much. I mean, he talks about a lot of the same stuff that Emperor Penguin does in his video, where he just talks about the complete bankruptcy of military strategy present in the movie by both sides. I mean,
like cartoonishly,
Yeah, but there's one where he just says how they should have just like blown Poe up immediately instead of bandying with him, and they do this total Star Fox 64 reference. It's just it's so hilarious. It's like his X-wing gets blown up, and you hear the death music from Star Fox 64, and then you see the communication thing come up, but it's Rose's face, and then you hear Slippy go, "No!"
The little, the Fox, are you there, Fox?
And as a longtime fan of Star Fox and Star Fox 64, that was. But you know, again, there's just a quick sidebar. Like, see, for me, the original Star Fox on the SNES, that was where it was at. I don't know if you ever played that game, or even, I mean, you just watch a Let's Play of it. It takes like half an hour. Listen to the soundtrack. I mean, it had an immensely powerful and profound, just epic sci-fi soundtrack for the fact that this was a 16-bit system with a very limited chipset for generating sounds. I mean, it was like going to the theater and watching Star Wars, but you were actually like playing out Luke in an X-Wing.
Yeah, it was kind of game-changing, wasn't it? Yeah,
it was. And
that's why people loved it so much when it finally showed up on N64, I guess, because it had already won people over. Yeah.
And I had mixed feelings about that, because as much as I was a huge fan of Star Fox, and it's like the controls were butterscotch. The like the graphics, I mean, obviously they're dated now, but for the time, hey, that was cutting edge stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, hearing the characters' voices and all that, sure, Slippy sounded annoying as all heck, but, you know, whatever. The one thing I just could not get into, with a few exceptions, like Star Wolf's theme, Area 6, the theme of Zonus, those were good tracks. But, like, honestly, just like the whole fanfare for Team Star Fox itself, they couldn't, for I guess licensing reasons, because the music composer from the original game did not work on the N64 game, and I guess they were not legally allowed to use any of the melodies that he had come up with.
Oh wow!
So Koji Kondo, the sound designer for the original game, handled the music for Star Fox 64, and I mean, no disrespect to Koji, I just did not care for his musical interpretation of the universe as well as I can't remember if his name was like Hideki Itsunawa or something. I'm probably getting the name completely wrong, but anyway, yeah. If you listen to, I'm sure you're familiar with the Star Fox 64 soundtrack. If you listen to the original soundtrack,
yeah,
to me they're like night and day. I mean,
really?
I mean, even better, like go on Newgrounds, find some crazy nerd fanboys orchestral remastery of the original soundtrack, and it's like, dude. I mean, you want to hear Hans Zimmer's take on this?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'll probably be listening to that over at work. That sounds incredible. Yeah.
Like the boss credits music from the original game, where it was kind of like a pre to the end game credits. It followed the end game cutscene, but it showed kind of like brief bios on all the bosses you fought. It just had such an amazing weight to it for the instrumentation that was available for that game.
Yeah. I mean the N64 one was pretty formative for me. I think that was one of the first games that was really difficult on N64 that I beat. So yeah, and that took a long time for me. It took like me and my best friend like working at it like all summer to beat. I wonder how hard it'd be now, but probably actually pretty hard still because of.
I could probably go back now and blow my old top scores out of the water because I know the cheat. It's not really a cheat, but it's like an Easter egg that people posted all these ridiculous scores on the Nintendo forums at the time, but nobody explained how they were possible.
Yeah.
If you held, I think it was like the L trigger or the R trigger or whatever, it's like if you kept your Arwhi at a half roll, it negated the lock-on function of your charge shot. So your charge shots would never lock on. So you would get bonus hits for every charge shot that landed.
Oh, wow.
And you could abuse that to just rack up an insane amount of bonus points for every mission. And that's how people were boasting scores of like 400 plus on Zonus.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you don't want to play it that way. You want to. I'm sure. I mean, the narrative and the fun. I guess. Well, I don't know. Like maybe it would be fun to play the game from that approach.
Part of me would after participating in so many. Well, a younger, less mature me participating in so many score wars years ago. But thinking it's just not numerically possible to get these scores, and then you watch somebody on Games on Quick do it, and it's like, oh yeah, by the way, if you hold this button down, your shots don't lock on, so it's bonus points galore. I'm like, you have got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
I must have played through that game 50,000 times. I had medals on every level. I had the new title screen unlocked and everything, and I never even caught that.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of crazy.
Yeah. No, that's fascinating. I never knew anything about that. Of course, I mean, when you're like 12, like how much do you really know about the games you're playing?
Yeah, I was like 17, 18 at the time. So.
Yeah. Okay, well, maybe we can call it a night at that.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, thanks for chatting with me.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
And we'll talk offline about doing lunch sometime, which would be good.
Yeah. Oh, work. Do you want to pick up again on Tuesday?
Yeah, I think we can still do that. So that'll be good.
Well, cool. Just hit me up in text and let me know, and
All
I'll
right.
talk to you then.
All right. Great. Have a good night.
You too.
And thanks to everyone who might be tuning in now or later.
Good night, Internet.
Yep. See ya.